Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. Now, recently, we did one of the list things. List not as in the composer. List is in a list of things, where we talked about the 5 greatest Beethoven pianists, and I invited everybody to give their own choices, and we got a marvelous selection of pianists and had a wonderful conversation about it. In fact, this whole series is, I think, going to do some really, really good things, especially for people looking for different options and who don't know the music well. The risk in doing a series like that is that everybody's just going to name everything, and we're going to wind up nowhere. But there were names that came up regularly, and so that was interesting. And one of the ones that came up regularly that kind of surprised me was Paul Lewis. Now, this is actually a really good deal, this set. This set on Harmonia Mundi contains 14 CDs. It was assembled, I guess around 2019. And you get all the piano sonatas, plus the Diabelli Variations, plus the 5 piano concertos, which is really pretty amazing. For the price of 2 full-price CDs, it's like, $40 maybe, $35? It's an incredible bargain. It really is. And there's a lot of really fine piano playing in it. But to include Paul Lewis among the 5 great Beethoven pianists, it seems to be merely because he did all this stuff. I don't know. I really don't know. I went back and I listened to this stuff. I wanted to check it out myself, having not heard it for a while, to see if maybe I was on drugs when I heard it the first time and was not entirely impressed. And no, I wasn't on drugs, and I remain not entirely impressed. And I want to tell you why. In this particular case, first of all, when we do these greatest whatever lists, it's good to have some time for the performances to kind of sink in. And there was a sense I got when Paul Lewis got named that he was being listed just because he was available, because the stuff is out, it's gotten promoted, which is such a rare thing in the classical music world. Paul Lewis is a very fine pianist. Let's not mince any words about that. He was mentored, let's put it that way. He's a student of Alfred Brendel, who was himself an estimable Beethoven pianist, even though I don't particularly care for him. But the thing that's so interesting about Lewis is that what he has in common with Brendel is his tendency to underplay Beethoven's heroism, his grandeur, I think the emotional depths of despair to which he sometimes plummets. There's a coolness emotionally to these performances that Lewis may not feel that way. He may think he's giving 100%, and maybe he is. Obviously, the interpretation is limited or framed by the emotional range of the interpreter. So in that respect, I think he and Brendel have something in common. But what's different is that Lewis has an absolutely beautiful tone. Brendel's tone was flinty, I think, at best. He was more of a line guy, and Lewis is more of a chord guy. He's into beautiful sounds. And that's perfectly fine, too. There are plenty of people who play that way. But I found that, going through these things and rereading Jed's reviews at ClassicsToday.com, of course, and taking it all into account, that Lewis impresses me as somewhat fussy. There are very few moments where he lets go, where he lets the music just take him over and go nuts. He's very concerned with articulation, with fingering, with beautiful pedaling. One example when it works, I think, is the finale of the Moonlight Sonata, which has the intensity. It's very quick. It's beautifully phrased. The use of the pedal is really captivating to create atmosphere when motives are repeated or sections are repeated. It's well thought out, but it isn't played in a way which is mannered or inhibited. It's really, really beautiful. On the other hand, the Waldstein Sonata, for example, begins with just the most tensionless opening. And it's such a high tension opening. Now, you don't have to play it like a Gatling gun, of course. But here, it just sounds like a a cloud, a nebulous cloud. And he might have wanted a nebulous. I mean, nebulous clouds are nice. They have atmosphere. He may have wanted that. But boy, it takes a while to get hopping, even at a very quick tempo. So, there are things like that. Then in the Hammerklavier, there are all those moments where, he does sharp staccato chords where Beethoven just needs more sonority. You have to pay attention to the full note values that Beethoven notates. Just because it's loud, you just don't want to go like blip. He's a blipper sometimes. He blips a bit. So that got to me. The Opus 31 sonatas are very mannered. He can lapse into mannerism, I think, fairly frequently. But on the other hand, he does beautiful things elsewhere. I mean, his Pathetique sonata is gorgeous. The early sonatas, I think, come off much, much better. And you get the piano concertos. And his Beethoven playing in the piano concertos is really good. I think it helps that he has a like-minded accompanist. It's Jerzy Bielorlavec, who, as I pointed out many times, was a very sensitive and gentle soul. He's not going to overwhelm Lewis. He's not going to make Lewis sound smaller scaled than he is. They're even on the same page in the Emperor Concerto, which is an elegant performance rather than a magisterial performance. But they do beautifully by the piano concertos generally. I mean, the slow movement of the fourth concerto could have a little bit more grit. It could be more recitative-like, I think, in terms of the call and response exchanges between the piano and the strings. But, there are fabulous, fabulous moments in all these concertos. The finale of the fourth concerto is wonderful. The first two concertos are beautifully played and made to sound sort of better, especially the second concerto, made to sound better than it really probably is, because of the care that Lewis takes with phrasing and articulation. He draws you in and makes you listen, as he does in the best sonata performances. So there are very good things here. The Diabelli Variations, those didn't impress me so much. They struck me as somewhat mundane. There's just more to characterize in some of the individual variations. But despite the very amount of very good playing and some of the insights, is this really one of the great Beethoven pianists out there, considering how many people have done this? I don't think so. I think it's a really good deal. That's what I think this is. It's a bargain. And there's a lot of fine artistry in it. If I withhold the ultimate accolade of greatness, it's not because I want to be churlish or denigrate Paul Lewis's accomplishments. He has a lot of fans, a lot of followers, and he's a fine, fine artist. But I think his realization of Beethoven here is patchy. And that's my feeling. But if you want a real bargain way to get a pile of Beethoven's music for piano and orchestra, you can certainly go for this, and it won't do you wrong. That's for sure. I just can't get thrilled about it, and others of you did. So, and that's perfectly legitimate and perfectly fine. It was a wonderful exercise for me, talking about all of these different performances. And of course, you motivate me to listen, to re-listen, to constantly listen. And that's what we all have to do. That's the point of these talks, isn't it? We go back and we check things out again, and we listen, and we are enriched thereby. So I am grateful to all of you who mentioned Paul Lewis in that first talk, and I was happy to go back and listen to it again. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.